What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ladies Who Bronché, the podcast where we talk about all of the things that people say are not welcome at the dinner table, but at the brunch table, baby, anything goes. And this week, I am super excited to have this gorgeous voice at the table because she's someone who I was able to meet this year through my Sacred Artist residency at Kripalu. And first of all, the style on her, I was like, oh, yes, I was looking forward to the outfits every day. But then when I really got to hear her speak to not just devotion, but really this idea of allowing yourself to be in the space of play and indulging your inner child, that was something that resonated with me really hard at that time. And it was just the beginning of many, many gems and powerful interactions that I was able to have with this person. And I am so excited for you all to hear these gems and to hear the wonders of the wonderful, wonderful Ayesha Ophelia. Ayesha, who the fuck are you?
Well, first of all, thank you for my flowers. It's always so beautiful to feel into how people are seeing you, perceiving you, and I'll have to share a story about you and a moment that really sealed the deal for me. But all right, who the fuck am I? I'm an artist. I'm a creative. I'm a Black woman. I'm a poet at times. I'm a dreamer. I've been sharing my gifts and talents online for 10 years, even through the ugly, weird phases. And it's come to this point where I'm like, okay, I've really built something that's powerful. I love empowering people, especially women, to really move through their shadow, regain that power back and make the art only they can make. And so for me, that has a lot to do with soul. I know we're going to talk about the body and the way that it holds. And yeah, I'm a doer. I'm just like, let's do it. Let's go. Let's make it, It's like, why wait? I've always been like that. So, I get shit done. I get shit done.
Yes. Yes, I love that. And that get shit done energy, I think, really was a necessary force function for our collective through our time together in a way that I honestly really respected. As a Pisces, Colin isn't here to break down the chart, but something in my chart and the way that I live is like, yes, I have this Aries that's very like, yes, to the letter. But
Mhm.
once my feelings are involved, baby, that Pisces will take me through the flow and overthinking of
Mhm.
every little detail. And it was always really affirming to have your why not energy, I want to call it. It's almost like, well, why not try? Why not explore? What's the worst that can happen? And so I think that that is part of your medicine, is this ability to dare to dream without the fear of what comes after, because we're not responsible for that yet. We're just responsible for what is very much at the surface for us. So I
That's right.
would say that that is your medicine. So before we talk more about your medicine and the power that you hold, I would love to talk a little bit about brunch. So
Sure.
tell us, what is your favorite brunch plate and what is your favorite brunch drink?
Mm. Okay, so if we're brunching, I'm gonna need a little bit of salty, a little
Mhm.
bit of like salty savory, and a little bit of sweet. So I usually like will find a friend that's on that sweet tip. They'll get like some French toast or some pancakes with something drizzled over it, and I'll nibble that, and then I'll get the like savory grits. So like I grew up making grits and eating grits, and I now make world-class grits like my mother, but yeah, that was always a special meal. So I like the savoriness of grits with like, I'm no longer vegetarian vegan, so like a little piece of meat, some butter, like a biscuit, I'm happy.
I love that. And what are you drinking with that meal?
You know what? Okay, so I've turned into a kind of mocktail type person, and for no particular reason. I like the high vibe mocktail. So, let it say like ginger and hibiscus or like passion fruit, something
Oh,
like that.
yeah.
Something like that with maybe like a little ginger beer, like, but make it look like pretty, like it's a cocktail, put the little like fresh herbs at the top. And yeah, that's my drink of choice.
Yeah. Mocktails are really the jam right now. Like on a market perspective, I know they've had this massive explosion, especially post COVID. There's a lot of people who gave up drinking alcohol just because their body called for it. But really the mocktail for me is more exciting than the cocktail. Like there is something
Yeah.
about, the presentation and like you said, the fresh herbs and anything ginger, hibiscus, and passion fruit, it feels very ancestrally aligned and correct.
Yeah.
So tell me, what do you like to discuss over a meal?
Ooh, this is where it gets juicy. Okay. Most of my brunches have been girls' brunches. So, we have to talk about relationship, but we kind of just like, we do a catch up. It's real, like human and fun. And then we like drop into whatever's there. So, sometimes it's like some juicy sex talk. Sometimes it's like something we're grieving. Sometimes it's like we're excited about what we're creating and we can't stop talking about that. So I'm really kind of like, I love a mixtape. So I love just showing up, come as you are type of vibe, and then see how you can weave. And I'm definitely the person at the table that likes to like make sure really no one's on their phone. Like, yes, we'll have our little selfie moment with whatever, but that we've put our phones away and that, yeah, we want to laugh, we want to connect, and we just want to leave feeling like our cup like overfloweth.
Yes, yes, I love that. And I think going back to the sex talk, I find that I have been missing and craving more of that talk. I feel like a lot of the women that I have convened with lately, we've been so healing focused or career focused that sometimes we're not talking about the sex. But once upon a time, you could not shut me up about some sex in all shapes and forms. This era that is approaching is bringing the eros back in a way that I'm really excited to get back out in these streets and talk
Yes.
brunch, especially, I'm a my man. And I think that the experience of being in a healthier relationship or at this stage in my life in a relationship is very different than my younger years when I was out brunching and hoeing, I will say, so like to be in a different era of my embodied wholeness, right? That nice hoe energy,
Right.
but to be able to speak to it in conjunction with all of these other wonderful things that I weaved into my life is something that I'm excited to get out
Yeah.
to. So it sounds like I got to go to brunch with you.
Yeah, come on, let's go. There's a lot of Scorpio in my chart, so I'm always about the taboo. Like, let's just pull back the curtain and realize how alike we are, how human we are, how funny it is, how weird it is. And, sex is just one of those things that the conversation never gets old. I'm like, what else can we talk about?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell me, what was it like going out to eat when you were growing up?
Mm. I grew up Seventh-day Adventist, and as you know,
Yes.
we would either be end up at potlucks, so
Mm.
we would be at, friends' houses or parts of churches, and it always felt exciting because, there was some, like, good someone made a good casserole. Someone made a banging casserole out of stuff you would never think was good, first of all, and then it was like time to hang out with your friends, kinda like, be in your own form of church. Not that I felt forced that I was in church, but it was just nice to connect with friends, and then sometimes we would go out to, like, Olive Garden or
Mhm.
Ryan's Family Steakhouse. I'm, like, aging myself and telling on myself at the same time, which is fine, but it was like an all-you-can-eat buffet that after I got, like, I don't know, 12, 14, 15, I kinda put my nose up at. I was just like, "We need to eat healthy, and what are we even doing?" But before that, I would just get down, like, full on stomach ache because I'd ate so many gummy bears or, like, so much sour cream, like,
Yes.
no
Yes.
restraint.
Like having also grown up Seven-day Adventists,
Mhm.
there was something really beautiful about the community that was fostered in those spaces. I would say, though, especially being the kid or the teenager who got to break out, because I feel like I don't know about you, but like all the real tea and all of the things that we were really experiencing in our lives that we couldn't talk about in front of the adults because they would come in with that word of God. You know what I mean? We were able to really embody it, but it felt beautiful because, at least in those circles, it was, I think, an earlier representation of what I've been able to build in community now, which is talking about like connection to source or feeling a larger power that is walking with you in some way, shape, or form. And so I would always remember it would be like the super rebellious kids, but then the ones who were like super religious, or maybe even the pastor's kids, even though the pastor's kids used to be down with the rebellious kids more than
Yes,
the,
exactly. We all know about that.
you know?
If you know,
And but
you know.
exactly, right? If you know, you know. But there was always that beauty of like in our younger embodied selves digging into what spirit meant in the walks of lives that we were living. And so sometimes people would be talking about what they were doing in school or the little crushes that were happening amongst the church. And there was always that wise, sagey kid that would come in with the word of God. And it never felt forced. It always felt really natural for them. And so I gotta check in on those people. I'm wondering if they are the crystal wielding new moon, ritualizing people these days. Cause I mean, that's certainly what I became.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny that you brought that in because I was literally just thinking this morning about how we're kind of always who we're gonna be, you know? Like, of
Mhm.
course, time shifts it and changes the shape, the vessel a little bit, but I bet you if you, yeah, look back at that person, it totally makes sense, like, their trajectory makes sense, so, here
Yeah.
we are.
Here we
Crystal
are.
loving. We used to be that, and now we're here.
Absolutely. All right. So now let's move into our cheers section where we cheers dope people or dope things that we've been engaging. And I just need to shout out the practice of somatic healing because it's something that had entered my life. And I think of all of the modalities that I have practiced has been the most difficult for me,
Mm,
actually. I'm very much talk. Like I could talk you into anything, talk myself out of anything, but when it comes time for me to really invite the rest of my body outside of my voice into the conversation, it's where the most comes up for me. I realize that myself and a lot of people in my community, we don't honor movement. Like we'll have practices and we're up and moving in many ways, but so much of the way we move is tied to a certain goal or box that we've put our mind into. And so we're not really connected with ourselves while we are moving. And so somatic practices, even at something as simple as the morning practices that we would do at Kripalu, like we're
mhm.
really challenging blindfolding ourselves and getting sensual. What? Like those were the absolute hardest, most uncomfortable parts for me because it really brought to the surface for me ways in which I was still healing from sexual trauma
Yeah.
that I had reckoned with in a way where I'm like, I'm living my life. That doesn't affect me. Blah, 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 blah. But my body hadn't caught up to that. And so somatics was such a beautiful way to give my body voice.
Mhm.
And I think that there's so many of us who would benefit from even the smallest movements, even if it's just hip gyrations, a little stretch, right? To allow ourselves to give our body voices in that way because it's incredibly powerful and healing. And I would like watch you and some of the others in the space and be like, wow, they are like about this somatic stuff.
Mhm.
And you all really inspired me. And it's something that I still have so much room to grow in and explore in deeper. But I wanted to put that out into the world, y'all, in this time where everybody's feeling so overstimulated and in their head. Get into your bodies.
Yeah, I love that. I just was like just drinking up what you said, and that's exactly it. The soma speaks, our body is an oracle, and we have to give it a voice, right? We're always in our minds, and all our minds can do is reason, and our body actually can intuit and understand and flow. And so yeah, it's actually been a deep avenue for me out of this analytical thinking brain, the Virgo in me, the controlling parts of me to really, like you said, slow down, tap into your breath, tap into your sensuality, tap into where you can actually, like when we're talking about embodiment, this is what we're talking about. We can only go the pace of our body when it comes to money, when it comes to calling new things in, and we need space from the old stories, the old way we've held our body in order to allow something new in. And for me, that's what, and part of what called me to this work was that I was in physical pain. And so I had to finally listen and I had to go on this journey with unwinding some old patterns that started to cause physical pain. So I'm in deep. I mean, I almost said balls deep, but I'm really in deep with like soma.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder how did it like enter your life? Was it something that just like did you go to a workshop? Did you read about it? How did you
Yeah.
come upon it?
Well, part of it was that, maybe 8, 9 years ago, people started talking about the nervous system in a new way. And I took this course about money and the nervous system. And it was like, we feel so fresh as souls where we're just realizing that the energetic parts of us have an effect on the physical parts. And so, yeah, it was like, duh, it was just this big awakening within me. And then really that was like the first layer and a few. So maybe I took some courses, I'm listening to more podcasts or YouTube. And then 3 or 4 years ago, bam, like my left knee starts to really hurt and I haven't had an accident. There's no causality except my inner realms, my inner worlds. And so I had to go within that. And yes, I took, I started going to the acupuncturist. I started, a relationship with my chiropractor and my spine and how I'd been holding my body for so long. They say the issues are in the tissues. And whenever our fascia feels fear, pain, anger, it tightens. And with the idea that, our fascia is this like, almost like picture like a fibrous layer of like almost picture like the mycelium and how it holds and it's a messenger. We have that web within our body, and if you're in pain, it's likely that, through Chinese medicine, they call that stagnation of qi. It's life force. It's the life force that we want to be creating with, but it's stuck in those old stories and these parts of our bodies. And I learned about the knee and that it's the joint that really has to do with moving forward. It's on the feminine side. So I went into like deep inquiry with myself on these different layers and really just came home to like dance,
Mhm.
fun, movement, laughter, ease, and just get the shit out of you. Like literally and physically get it out, move it. You gotta.
Yeah, yeah, and it's such an ancestral practice that I think we've been removed from. I mean, talk about Seven-Day Adventists, it was no dancing.
Oh,
In 0, you know what I mean? Or at least for me, only in the privacy of our homes, and in an era where we didn't have phones and all that stuff. I find that these days, even the elders who, would bust a little two-step here and there and be like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa," won't, because they immediately the young people are like, "Oh my god, you're moving." And for us, it's the excitement of you can kind of see the energy when you're in practice and community, which is what I love about the fact that my introduction to somatics has been within community. And as a seer, like watching the energy happening in the room in real time as people are releasing, especially when it's rooted in joy,
yeah.
is so beautiful. It's the kind of thing where I think about the movie Sinners and that scene where they're at the club and then they do that big flashback of, Black history and music over time. But like it kind of feels akin to that in that there is this like rumbling of energy that comes about. And I even think, and it might sound silly, but I think movements or the movements that we're craving for in a social justice perspective also include this kind of movement. That actually the word movement, when we think about the root of it, does include the way that our physical bodies can contribute to energetic shifts that are contributing to harm in other ways. And
Yes.
so dance is resistance, I think.
Yeah. I love that. That's exactly it. It's like going into your body and creating space, lessens the density in the world. There's not that charge. You're more sovereign. It's like a gift you give to yourself, really, and it does. It affects the whole.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really do encourage folks, if you haven't heard of somatics or this feels new,
Mm.
get a little curious, see what calls you. There's an array of somatic practices. Like we're not even scratching the surface here. I just really wanted to invite that in, especially in this time where I'm seeing so many people's nervous system get overstimulated, so much worry and fear over what is happening in the world, which is valid. But again, when we talk about movements and community movements, we do have to allow ourselves to embody the difference and bring to life the change that we want to see outward
Yeah,
through ourselves from within.
yeah,
So check out some
yeah.
somatics, y'all.
I love that. I love that. Can I sprinkle on one little last
Please.
thing? It's like with soma, no feelings are bad. Anger, rage, like
Mhm.
Mother Earth can hold all of that. It's just when we hold on to it, it stagnates, and that's what creates rifts and wars. It's that, what do they say? If you can't have healthy conflict, it's gonna lead to war. And so it's the same thing kind of in your body, pushing your edges, moving past. Pain's an invitation in, it's not an invitation away from. That's something that I learned. It's like a lot of people make their life smaller around their pains, and I decided to move into mine, Scorpio, and my life changed.
Yeah. Yeah, truly life-changing, truly, truly life-changing, and I think especially for Black and brown communities, which are often feel at the center of these tensions,
Mhm.
man, we all have a culture to refer to that
Yeah,
includes movement in some way, shape, or
yeah.
form. Get into it.
Right.
Get into it. It is
Yes.
truly a blessing and a gift. Aisha, I'm curious, is there anything you would like to shout out this week?
I love it that we started at Soma. I'm going to keep it in kind of the healing space. Traditional Chinese medicine, TCM,
Mm,
has really changed my life. And obviously I'm not a Chinese medicine practitioner. It's very much a ancient art, but what it invited me into was back into a relationship with my body. And so
mm,
like when you go to the acupuncturist, they do amazing work. They can literally take your blood pressure with they just basically hold your wrist and they can feel into what organs are in balance and out of balance. They look at your tongue and then they go to work with their little magic needles. And what I learned is those points of stagnation, I touch my body a lot. Like I check in and I touch it because there's sometimes where it's like you don't even know there's a quiet ache within you until
mm.
you like start to get into that. And so that's what it really invited me back into is this like deeper relationship with what hurts, what's open. So I'm doing a little shout out to my acupuncturist in Wimberley and anyone else who's curious about TCM, you can look it up. Beyond that, I wanna shout out the artists in the collective because, like, it's so amazing to see you shine and do what you do. It's so amazing to see what we went through, the bumps and the expansions and the time together and really, like, what we're all up to. Like, I just feel so proud and excited, yeah, just watching you, watching Colin step into things he wants to do, watching Allison create art, watching Nico, watching so many of the people, DNA, all of us have gone on to like it really was just like I just see someone like a leg up, like someone just saying, "Come on, we got this," and like looking at us, I gotta shout us out.
Yes, absolutely. I wanna jump on that and say that going into the space, I had no idea what was like, I had no idea what I had stepped into. I wanted to run in the other direction because it was confrontational in the best ways possible.
Yes.
And so I definitely attribute a lot of the shine that I have right now, the lack of fear that I'm moving with, like a lot of the circumstances that I walked in with and fear about money and all these things, like, a lot of those circumstances haven't changed, but my energy around them certainly have. And
Yes.
so, with that shift in energy has come a shift in what I've been attracting. And so, the math is mathing on how it all connects. It feels like we are holding a field that we created together and are really uplifting it in powerful ways. I mean, even he said with her podcast, right? At all levels,
Yeah.
we're out here. And I'm so proud of us because I feel like I'm a part of an army, if you will, of good and of love.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to have met everyone and not feel so alone in the work and how we weave our spirit and our artistry and our devotion, which we're going to get into a little bit more later.
Love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's talk about the refusal that some people have to evolve and go through ego death because it's scary, to be fair. But I feel like this resistance that we are feeling in the field everywhere in the world is something that I want to invite people to release. I feel like people are very attached to identities, to titles, to things that have helped them get to where they are today, but are ready to be released.
Yes.
Many people don't know what the I say that and it's like, okay, but what does that mean and what does that look like? So for our Tuta Loca es section today, I want to talk a little bit more about deathing and the idea of releasing and letting go. And curious for you, what have been some of the ways in which you have really been able to expand through release and surrender and deathing of old ways or identities?
Yeah. That's a great question. I wanna go in 2 directions. I wanna tell you the story of part of the story of losing my mother, so actually really walking up to death's door and seeing it very close. And I wanna talk about kind of first, let's start with the societal picture. And it's like no wonder that we are so afraid to move into the realms of anything that have to do with death. So, like, if you pull tarot cards, usually the last card people wanna see is the death card because it means the ultimate transformation. It means we have to meet all of the shadowy parts of ourselves and move through that place. And then, like I said, we're a totally death avoidant culture. We really don't deal with death. We ask someone else to be the intercessor on that. We don't usually talk about it or prepare for it, even though we know it's one of the only certain things that will happen to us. After I lost my mom, I really got a taste of the avoidance we have towards grief and hard feelings and us wanting to just kind of stay with the love and light. And it really asked of me to create spaces where people could be in their grief. This was before I even knew what a death doula was. My mom's been in spirit for over 10 years, but I was like, maybe I heard it somewhere, or maybe I said it. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like it dropped into the field for so many people at the same time. And I was like, wow, we need a doula because I thought about being a birth doula and had started to go through that training. We need a doula that's really there when we are deathing, when we're actually physically deathing, and when we're leaving behind an identity, something we've held on to as our own, how to release that, trust in the mystery and shift. So, yeah, it really came became crystal clear to me after my mom passed and I lost her, and I was so a part of that process with her, the slow process of releasing life and going into the invisible and something else. And so, I've been on this path. This language was familiar to me, but I was like, all right, how am I really going to be when my mom's leaving this planet? And it's clear to me that that's happening. It wasn't sudden. So, there were actually many years and many walks through the hospital that prepared me to help her release life. And being with someone at the end is trippy and psychedelic. That's the way it's supposed to be. There's literal psychedelic energy that's running through that person's body. There's DMT, there's cannabinoids, there's all kinds of things that take them out of their logical brain into the current of all that is. And you can feel that when someone goes. You can feel the deep, dark grief of they're not in their body anymore, and seeing someone not in their body, you're like, "Oh, their whole animated thing was spirit, was God, was source." Like, that's the truth. And it's both and. I think when you're deathing, you have to really be able to hold the grief and you have to be able to hold the mystery and the possibility. And I think having conversations, having places we can talk about grief, having a artistic relationship with it is going to make us be able to do the little D deaths before we all walk ourselves home, basically.
I love that phrasing of having an artistic relationship with our grief because we think about art therapy, for example, and a lot of people just go, whatever, without actually getting into the practice and play of that. And not that death is a joke, but these smaller D deaths, as you described them, there is an element of humor in the reflection of what once was and how we can give ourselves permission to laugh at how we were just humaning, how, we got to be in those places. Sometimes the fear of letting go is the fear of having to confront a level of shame for something that you were carrying or a way that you were being. And so you think maybe if you don't have to change or let it go, but get really quiet and reduce yourself, that is better than like putting it out on display, if you will, for yourself, even through this process of self reflection, of release. And maybe it is a little psychedelic because for some of us, I can certainly say, right? Like I've had psychedelic journeys where that is what it took. That is what it took for me to allow my human to quiet down a little bit and let something deeper come through me to let me be in conversation and in laughter
Mhm.
at myself,
Yeah,
right? And with
yeah.
myself. Also embody that through artistry and allowing it to be silly songs or artistic expressions and things that don't have to exist in the canon of being a creator who's producing to produce. And I think that part of this idea of the smaller ego deaths that can happen, whether they're psychedelic or not, still involve this element of creation, still involve this element of larger than yourself, mushiness, being able to remold in a way that isn't always something that conventional therapy will offer or conventional of religion will offer, right? That it's really something that is yours to explore.
Yes, I
Yeah.
love that.
So we are going to move into our plate of the day, and we are going to talk about devotion as a pathway to our highest creation because you, to me, are a master of devotion, one who is in practice of it, but one who has really positioned herself as a leader, if you will, in inviting others
Mm.
into that journey and embodying that. And you have I mean, if y'all just go to her website, there are so many rich offerings and opportunities to dig into the Aisha's mind and how she invites collectives into it. But I also got a bit of my own preview when we were at Kripalu together. And again, this idea of devotion as you embody it is something that feels really special and beautiful, and I want to dig into. But before we get into that, I invited the animal medicine to come into the conversation, and I drew two cards. And the two cards that came out for us were the Black Panther and the elk,
Mm.
which I absolutely love. The Black Panther speaks of embracing the unknown and confronting your fears of letting go, but also entering the void. Right? Going deeper, getting rid of some of the conventional distractions that we have to really be with yourself.
Mhm.
And then the elk medicine speaks of stamina, right? And keeping up your stamina, but also being mindful of what stamina needs to mean. Does it need to mean rushing and go, go, go? Or can it mean softness and self reflection in that way? And so these two animals coming together for this conversation feels like a nice foundation for what devotion can look like, because sometimes people hear the word devotion and they go into this go mode of, I think about the social media influencers who are like, if you don't wake up at 5 a.m. and aren't doing this today, like you're not devoted and you're not, and there's so many labels that go under devotion in that framework that can be quite intimidating and feel like, wow, I there's no world in which I'm keeping up with that.
Yeah.
But devotion feels like something that you design and that your body and your spirit kind of guides you through. And so I'm going to let you speak as the expert. What are some thoughts around devotion as a pathway to our highest creation?
Yeah, thank you for weaving in the cultural meme moment that we're in right now, because there are specific people like that, right? And my man is a Capricorn, and he has the energy of the elk, of the goat, of the I'm waking up at 5 a.m., I'm building my legacy. This feels good. I find my purpose in this. And maybe you're a bit more Piscean, where it's like, yeah, so it's not gonna look the same way, but here are the commonalities, and I've spent a lot of time in this world of devotion because I love the gene keys, and it's a system sort of like human design. It's an astrological thing that you quiz that you take to understand what energies of possibility are running through your body, what your highest potential is, and what are some of the pitfalls and downfalls that you might encounter. And so I'm a stubborn mother I just am. Like, I'm a fixed sign. There's so much Scorpio in my chart, and there's a gene key. It's gene key 29, and it's the journey from half-heartedness to devotion, and it's through the pathway of commitment. And so it appears in my chart 3 or 4 times. So this is obviously something that I think I'm uniquely qualified to speak on because I've spent so much time kind of in the half-hearted energy. I know that doesn't click, but it's like there was a moment I decided, and it was right around my mom's death. And before that, I'd been like 1 foot in, 1 foot out of a lot of things. And you kind of you stay in this cycle of the washing machine, really, and life really wants to see you move, expand, grow, spread your wings. And again, we're all learning at the pace that we're learning, but for me, devotion is the fuel for your dreams. It's the fuel for your creativity. And we can open aspects of ourself, of our life, of our magnetism only if we return over and over again. And it's not perfection isn't required, but it's literally like an energy that accompanies you. And it's like the saying where if you take one step towards the gods, they rush towards you, or whatever it is. They take however many steps. And that's really the energy of devotion. It's like, it's a self fulfilling loop, kind of like, to bring it down to a really practical level. It's like when you start to, all right, I really want to align what I'm saying about my body with my actions. So I'm going to get up off the couch. I'm gonna set out my shoes, and I'm gonna go be in nature every day for 10 or 15 minutes, and I'm gonna let it grow. You get into a like self-fulfilling loop where it's like, "Oh my gosh, I actually feel good. I move through this resistance." We talked about resistance. It's a sacred membrane. It's the exact amount of challenge you need to go be on the other side and be the person that you're saying that you wanna be, or be able to hold the goals or the visions or the money or the relationships, the greater the resistance is often the greater the gift. So, things that we have no resistance about, we're great at. We could do it in our sleep. It's not evolving us. It's not taking us further. Those things are great, but I'm a person that's about that creative edge and what happens when we let our devotion lead us into, we talked about some of our shadowy stuff. So yeah, I don't know, that's just like a little breath of, what's there for me about devotion. But I mean, I literally did a whole symposium called Wifey, and people can tune into that. We recommitted to our art, our craft, ourselves. We basically remarried ourselves and said, if this matters to me, then I really want to be devoted to it. And here's a promise and a practice that's going to move the needle.
Ugh, I love that. And what would you say is the difference between devotion and obsession or commitment or consistency in the conventional ways that
Yeah,
people might think about that?
that's such a good question. I feel like the reason commitment is the pathway is because how many times have you committed to something and then 3 days later you're uncommitted? Do you know what I mean? Like, it also has a higher essence that we can step into when we really are like, sort of like come what may. And that doesn't mean that we don't quit things or we don't pivot, but we really uh, arrive as who we say we are. And we really like, um, stand in the gap between what's here and what we're wanting with our actions, our mindsets, our shapes. And again, none of this requires perfection, but it does require kind of like a chop wood, carry water. Like, okay, I had a bad week, I had a bad year, I had a bad few years, and I'm back. I'm wanting to step again into that devotion. And something that Richard points out in Gene Key 29 is that commitments have a natural conclusion, and there's something
Mhm.
about those 7-year cycles that really allow us to, milk everything from our yes, right? And sometimes when we don't stick with it, this is gonna be maybe a little controversial, and there's 2 ways to look at it. We get into cycles where we keep seeing the same person because we haven't learned our lesson, and sometimes those 7 years are really condensed. It's not literally 7 years, but it's knowing when to go in, knowing when it's time to let it go and it needs to transform. Um, oh, there's something else I wanted to add, but that was such a good question.
Yeah, I think there is something to cycles and the ways in which sometimes we get heady about what we think we're devoting ourselves to, and we don't invite spirit, if you will, into that conversation. Sometimes when we are living in a shadow or are in a dark place, we talk to ourselves in ways that aren't necessarily the kindest, right? And so because we want to get in alignment with what we consider devotion, but is a different kind of discipline that is not a healthy discipline because it is coming from this voice of, if not this way, then here is a consequence, and it's like
Yeah,
doom and gloom. Like there's no
yeah.
redemption built
Mm,
into the thought process around how that flows. And so with that lack of redemption, when we do find ourselves in moments where it's like, okay, maybe people use the word failed, I will say showed up differently than what you intended, right? But when people think they fail, right, then they go into this punishment, and it's almost like they devote themselves to the punishment of it
mm,
all. You know what I mean? So suddenly they have all the language of devotion and, let's say can talk the talk that you just spoke, but they're not actually walking it because the thing that they are devoted to, they haven't quite faced yet. And so that cycle that you're talking about, the 7-year cycle, will really drag you. And I can definitely attest to, and it's funny you're even saying 7 because I'm like, damn, I did have a wild 7 years
yeah,
of whole days
yeah.
that was totally that. It was totally me being in denial of what my higher self was calling me towards, and me feeling like I owed a circle of completion
Mm,
to these people who I was in cahoots with, because I that's what I thought devotion looked like, was if I allow myself to sit around to be punished and held accountable in
yeah,
a particular way for my whole actions
mhm,
versus saying
yeah,
I can evolve, and I can choose to not make it my responsibility to make sure that we are all evolving vibrating at the same space. I had a little love triangle thing going on. So like, I'm like that I was responsible for the other points of the triangle was simply not true, but again, I think the narrative we tell ourselves with accountability is that we cannot be redeemed until other people feel good about us and how we get to move. Almost like I don't get to experience joy and redemption until the people who I feel maybe I've harmed or caused certain trouble with feel that way. And really, I think part of the path of devotion, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is giving yourself permission to say, yo, fuck it. I'm starting clean slate.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, catch yourself where you're kinda cock blocking yourself, and if you're a person that doesn't it just depends, it's like an adaptogenic. Sometimes that is the medicine of saying no because you've always, always, always gone through with what you were say you were gonna do, even if the internal no was there. And then if you're the opposite and you kinda just always start things and don't stop, there's medicine for you in completion. So you really have to like know thyself. This is part of the ultimate devotion of knowing yourself and really like being in that relationship with your dream life and your shadows. Like, what are they trying to tell you? What patterns are you in the midst of repeating? How can you call yourself up? You know?
And I think in that calling yourself up, you start to invite yourself to elements of play
Mhm.
and mystery and being able to dive into curiosities in ways that are really awesome. And I will say your social presence to me is one that screams play and curiosity and giving yourself permission to expand in ways that is really it's a beautiful model. And I would love if you could talk a little bit about what that's like. What is your process of creation? Like what allows all these juicy, fun, colorful ideas to come into your field?
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. So you're like, I can be very serious, you know? And I love it that what I create feels playful because that's really the essence I've been calling into my life since my mom passed was like, all right, you've done the like serious work and there are times for that, but bring in that play. It's very much like a collage artist. I really feel inspired by textures and colors and sounds and emotions and feelings. And I really try to kind of cohere those. And I think collage is one of the most powerful ways to do that. It's layering these different elements because 'cause we're not just one thing. That's what I always loved about collage. Literally, I can like, I get chills thinking about the first collage that I saw. It was on a friend's, those black and gray notebooks that you really cheap, you would, like, write in. I remember she collaged the front and, it was, like, the biggest remembrance, and speaking of obsession and actually Scorpios kind of rule obsession, and I think there's positive ways to let that obsessive flow move through you, right? There's times where people channeled whole works of arts and they had to like, kind of go feral and abandon all their like normal ways of being in the world so they could birth this art. So like sometimes it's not going to ask you for something that's pretty and nice and like whatever. It's going to ask you to undo yourself for it. So yeah, sometimes my art asks that, sometimes it's just fun. I found this photo of myself and I actually brought it to Kripalu, speaking of, and it was on the altar for a while, but it was this picture of me when I was a kid and my mom had bought me like kind of like my first Photoshop. It was like this really like I forget what it was like your graphic design or something. And so I've always kind of taken to physical collage, graphic design, and when I started originally on Instagram, it was over 10 years ago. So I've really allowed my nervous system to be okay with this level of visibility. I will say that. And
Yeah.
just started building while nobody was there and kind of getting comfortable. And it feels very sustainable and seasonal, like I have friends who went from 0 to like 10, 20 and days because it was really hard for them. But anyway, so the art has grown over time. My message has pretty much stayed the same. I've always kind of taken to graphics and layering sounds and textures and music and ideas, and it really translated on IG for some reason and really like called in my people. I'm just ever surprised by how life-changing that was for me, and at the same time, I know things are changing, and that's part of like being able to death things is to let the ways you've done it evolve and to step into new layers and levels of leadership and actually activating leaders because we're all leaders and we really don't need like we need community and we need guides, but we also need to stand in our own, right? And That's kind of the ultimate message of creativity and sovereignty and beauty. We can't forget beauty.
And I will say, like, your aesthetic is beautiful.
Mhm.
I love the aesthetics that you put forward because there is something that feels beautiful about them, but playful, but also there is something that feels richly reverent, right? That the consistency of your messaging actually comes through as a level of reverence, but again, not reverence in the way where there isn't room for change and growth and again, wrongness,
Yeah,
but one that actually invites that in and says, yes, show me your shadow. Recently, you posted, due to Scorpio season, your shadow might flirt back, for
right?
example. This idea that that is kind of the point, right? To be in that dance of understanding who you are holistically without judgment, but more so the excitement of the endless possibilities that you have to control, and not in the sense of like rigid control, but to say, I'm going to make a different decision and
Yeah.
I am not going to tie the outcome of that decision to anything other than my desire to
Mhm.
explore. Because through that exploration, is where you are able to find your highest expression in the stripping away of all of these labels. And even for a lot of us who are on social media, some folks, like, I don't have a large following, but for me, I've had to learn to not let that be the thing I'm devoted to, hacking the algorithm just for numbers, but understanding that perhaps rejection is protection. And the reason I haven't been fully exposed in that way has more to do with the fact that I am still getting to the highest form of my expression in a way that when it makes
Yeah,
sense
yeah,
and when that vibration matches what is needed, it'll go, it'll reach. But for now it is mine and it is for me to be and play and discovery with. And so I say that to say, for those who are listening, like, don't give up
no.
your devotion practice because you are like, oh, it's been 3 months of devotion and I'm still hitting these same numbers, or I haven't blown up in whatever way that means to you, whether it's on or off social.
Yeah,
Growing is a process. In this age of instant gratification, I think there's something to finding deep gratification in the smaller wins,
yeah.
in the smaller transitions as a way to fuel you for this long game. A lot of us are giving up before we
Before
truly
the
come out of the
miracle.
chrysalis.
Yeah. Don't give up before the miracle, and honestly, make metrics the least interesting thing about what you're doing online. If you do that, you've really found the cheat code, because then you're going to be true to the art and it's going to find the right people. And those people may be small and mighty, or it may grow into a roaring forest fire. And really, if you stick with it and you make good art, like, your success is whatever you consider success is inevitable, but I really challenge people to make the metrics the least interesting thing, because that gets in the way of your art. It really does. You start to like think like other people, and then it just feels icky. Like, I'd rather do it on my own terms, slow and steady, or wild and ravenous, like whatever it ends up being. But yeah.
Yeah. It also attracts exactly who you're meant to align to, right? You've built this beautiful community over 10 years. One of the joys of meeting you and then following you on socials were how many people in my community have been following you and being like, "Wow, yeah, that makes sense as a vibrational match." And so the more that you allow yourself to be in your authenticity, to be in your highest expression, you also allow yourself to let the most important thing be the thing you're actually trying to attract and not just hand over your true gems for some metrics and being able to say, "Oh yeah, I have this blue check."
Thank you.
Absolutely. So Aisha, to close this out, what are any words of encouragement that you have for anyone who is in the beginnings of their journey of trying to even like understand or define what they may want to be devoted to for themselves? If they're like, "Okay, this all sounds great. How would I even begin?"
Yeah. Make it playful. Like, date yourself, court yourself. There's a book called The Artist Way that I think is a really
Mhm.
amazing framework to provide some of those answers, because you have like weekly things. I just love a framework. I love a structure because it gives the right amount of creative tension. And without that, we're having to like reinvent the wheel. And I think there's so many 40-day practices that you can be held within this chrysalis of kind of, this doesn't sound elegant, but you're throwing things at the wall. You're taking yourself on artist dates. You're saying, like, who was I when my art flowed freely? Like, where does it hurt? You're answering these questions through play instead of just like hardcore analysis, which really can keep us in that paralysis. So I've always been like, yeah, we don't have to get over something. We just need to make art about it so it gets lighter and lighter to hold. So the shape changes. So for me, it's about that creative impulse because it is so like it's the creator's design. It is so creative. It's so fruitful. It helps us have the many deaths that we need to have in order to like really birth our art. And part of it's just permission, like to want what you want and to let yourself be inspired by that process and make art of it, like make it light, make it playful, see what lights you up, see what turns you off. And you can't do that if you're just in this rigid analysis. The art that wants to be made through you is a sensual, somatic. I'm trying to pull in all the pieces we talked about, shadow work. It's about what we eat, how we eat, who we're moving with. To me, like the biggest thing is like, oh, this is a little tagline I made, but it's like most people build goals, rare people build vessels. And so it's about like, it's not about the algorithm, it's not about the goals, it's not about this conversation it's not freedom from, it's not freedom from this thing, it's freedom to. It's how do I move into what my gifts and talents are at this moment, no matter what sort of obstacles are in the way. And can I use those obstacles to creatively rebirth myself and bring about individual sovereignty and collective freedom?
Yes. Oof. Oof. That right there, that last soundbite, that was it. That was like the major gem. And I wholeheartedly co-sign that. We are in a time and space where our ability to be flexible is really calling upon us, and our ability to be flexible leads us down these pathways to be curious in spaces that we didn't realize we were being called to, but maybe there were parts of our soul that have always wanted to exist and swim in those particular waters, and allowing yourself to understand that at the end of the day, while there are markers of success and other conventional things that people are putting upon us, we are humans being. So we are just here to be. And so if anything, the point of the journeying, the point of devoting yourself to finding your highest expression is about you. It is not about any of these external factors. It's about what your soul gets to experience and the ways that your soul gets to grow. Because if you're somebody who believes we die and come back in reincarnated ways, get some work off the list. Like, release some of those loads. Allow yourself to come back embodied as something that don't got to carry all this heavy stuff, right? Maybe
Yes.
you'll come back as this
Yes.
gorgeous tree or another human, but one that is living a different life where the hard parts that you fear digging into now, it's not what you have to relive. It's not what you have to embody again. We get to be free. We are already free if we choose to see where freedom lives through us. And I know that that can feel controversial and be like, no, but there's all these factors in society and politics. All of that is true. And yet, what happens in my soul when I close my eyes and choose to take 10 minutes to meditate or self reflect cannot be taken away from me, whether I am out in the streets or, God forbid, in captivity. Like, that is mine and that is the soul and that is our life force.
Yes.
All of this other stuff is just the vessel.
Yes. That's what Julissa. I have to close my eyes because you have such a gift for transmission and for words and for, bringing them into focus in this really specific way. And so I've definitely missed that. Like I feel like I've sat next to a wise old oak tree for a very long time. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Truly, you are a mirror of the power and energy that we are holding in this larger container. I am grateful to know you, grateful to have had you on here with us today. Tell us, where can we find you? Follow your work. Do you have anything up and coming that we can support?
I started a unlearning platform during Kripalu, and it is a place where teachers' guides can really come and teach from that soulful lens where we're actually unlearning, and that's how we step into our power. And so I've taught algorithm alchemy, which was really about how to be online and share your gifts and talents without bowing down to the algorithm in some of the ways that we've been talking about. I just got finished with Wifey, which was my big symposium around devotion. And now what's being distilled through me is like very somatic and quiet and powerful. It's really powerful. Vessel is something that I've created that's a 9-month cohort for 12 people, and Kripalu inspired a lot of the power of groups within me. Like, that's my jam. And then I'm teaching a little 4-week activation in November called Space, where it really you can step into that somatic remembering. And just like when you're wanting to bring in anything, you have to have space for it. And your body's the same way. You have to have space and a pause from those old stories to allow new energy to flood in. So it's for creators. It's for the soft power, the quiet power. We often think that power yells or it's a metric, but really what I found is like you have to root before you rise. So
Mm,
that's what it's about. And you can
mm,
find all that at AyeshaOphelia.com or theunlearningportal.com.
I love that. I will definitely be checking that out. There is a lot of rich offerings there, and I just want to co-sign y'all. We have a powerful vessel here. This is a pure vessel. This is somebody who has done the work and is a safe space to really journey with. And so, Bronche stamp of approval. Check it out. You can find us at Ladies Who Bronche across all platforms. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And until next time, Bronche.